they have asked for and they cite before now. I got a call like 30 minutes ago, and they cited interest in reducing density. I asked Lori, and she said, "Our ordinance they're allowed more than justification." So even though, and we can be sympathetic to everybody who came tonight when we discuss it, but I do want to make sure everybody knows we kind of need to give them one because everybody gets that one option. But we can also, and I was just talking to Nicole about it. She's not happy, obviously. But we can say, if you wanted to say something after I'm going to call for a motion in a second. So I hope somebody will, do that because it's the right thing for us to do per the ordinance. But we can certainly during discussion say that we're unlikely to want to support another one after this, free one or whatever you want to call it.
When did we go last? Well, they never got there.
Morris never got here. Yeah. It is the first time for us, so this is one that by ordinance they should be granted. And Laurie, if we need Laurie to say so, we can do that just for everybody to hear it. In fact, I may even ask her if she'd be willing to. Yeah. So I just thought I'd give you that heads up so there's no surprise.
Thanks.
All right. Excuse me. Yeah. I've just been Yeah. If they can't fit, they can't fit. Because fire marshal. Can I, for argument's sake,
it's basically right.
Thank you. Yeah, I want the audience to hear. Thank you.
Right?
I think Brian has his hat by.
No, it's side of his pharmacy.
Okay, all right.
Well, give me an opportunity to come in.
Yeah, probably. Let's check. We'll probably. Well, that's it. All right, we're starting a little late.
He's not known to disagree with us that well, but it's an opportunity to make recommendations.
I'd like to have everybody's attention. So before we actually get started with the meeting, it's great to see so many people interested in a town council meeting. Glad you're here. I know not everybody is here with great thoughts, but we're glad to see you and see you being involved in your town. With that said, there's a couple of logistics. One is everybody needs to be in a seat in order to be fire code complete. If you cannot fit into a seat, then you need to be outside the doors, but we'll leave the doors open, at least until we feel like everybody's left and we can close them. There are also some seats on the front that have signs that say they're reserved for staff, and the staff have given those up. So please feel free for tonight's meeting to come sit in any of these seats in the front. We do ask you to fill in, so if there's seats in the middle, if you don't mind, please scoot towards the middle to move the empty seat towards the edge. Also, if you can be sensitive to who's left standing, if you feel like you can stand with no problem, feel free to give somebody else a seat. I think that's a courteous thing to do, but that's also up to you as an individual. And we'll take just a moment just to give this everybody a chance to find their place. There's two up here. There's at least one or two over here. It may happen. It may happen.
Can you guys slide? Yeah, sure.
No, right. We have one more seat up to the front. All right. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats that I can see. If there's 5 people that want to come in, we still got some seats. I think 5, roughly.
I think she's saying no, so maybe not quite.
Oh, no?
No, not these two.
Oh,
My husband.
okay. All right.
If somebody wants this seat up here, they can take it.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regularly scheduled Town Council meeting for the Town of Apex. This is September 17th, 2019. We're gathered together to make decisions on behalf of the Apex citizens tonight, and we're all blessed to be able to have freedom in this town of Apex, in this state of North Carolina, and in this country of the United States of America. We gather without fear of an oppressive government, without fear of speech censorship, and without fear of having our earthly possessions confiscated and our family members incarcerated unjustly. On behalf of everyone up here, we wish to thank all of those who protect us daily, who keep us safe, who keep us free, and especially those who gave their own lives to secure our liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. And in order to secure those rights, we the people consent to be governed by our own. So here we sit as council members, yet also citizens. May we today govern in a way that is fair and just and wise, and may we seek that wisdom from any and every source wiser than ourselves. Please join me for a few moments of silence. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Few logistics. First of all, the agenda packet was out there on the, what do we call that thing? Podium. On the podium. I'm thrown off by the number of people. Hopefully you got one. There may be some left, probably not, but if you don't have one, feel free to share with someone next to you. Second, if you intend to speak tonight and you don't know how this works, there's 2 things you need to know right now. Number 1 is you need to have picked up the yellow sheet on the podium, which is the guidelines for speaking in a public council meeting. You need to be familiar with those guidelines. Secondly, and importantly, is the sign-up sheet that is on the ledge. If your name is not on the sheet when the clerk brings them to me in a few minutes, then you will not be called and you will not have an opportunity to speak. I feel it's wise for me, even though we haven't done anything formally yet, to let everyone know that the applicant has asked for the Morris Acres agenda item, public hearing number 1, to be continued until October 15th. They have, excuse me. The applicant has asked, based on some discussion related to a reduction in density. Having checked with the town attorney, and I will let the town attorney speak now, but I wanted everybody to know before we get that far in the meeting. But according to the town attorney, an applicant has, by ordinance, the ability to ask for 1 continuance. Is that?
Per the UDO, the applicant has a right to request and a right to be granted 1 continuance. All subsequent continuances are at the discretion of the council.
Okay. So, no, so according to the town attorney, the applicant has the right to request and be granted one continuance. After that, it is at the discretion of the council. I wanted to let everybody know that, even though we're going to get to this item formally in a few minutes, so that you have that already in mind. With that, we now move into the time of presentations. And at this time, I'd like to call John Demers up to the front as we do the proclamation for the Peak City International Film Festival. So at this time, as he's coming forward, many of you know we've had in Apex for a few years the Peak City International Film Festival, and this is the 2019 iteration. Whereas the Peak City International Film Festival in Take 5 is an international film, TV, music, video, and media production competition for the producers of family-friendly content, and whereas the 5th annual Peak City International Film Festival will be held in the town of Apex from September 20th to September 21st, 2019, and whereas the Peak City International Film Festival seeks to motivate and cultivate talent and business skills of producers and directors, providing a festival to convey the passion of storytelling through the motion pictures, arts, and sciences. And whereas the Peak City International Film Festival allows stories and music for family members of various ages in TV, film, documentaries, as well as music videos, both feature and short productions that inspire us and to provide networking opportunities for those in development, production, and distribution. Now therefore, I, Lance Olive, Mayor of the town of Apex, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim September 21st, 2019 as Peak City International Film Festival Day and urge all citizens to participate in the event. Mr. Demers, feel free to come up and I will present this to you here. And then if you'd like to say anything at the microphone, please feel free. Thank you, sir.
And now our brief 2.5-minute
Thank you. All right, we now move to consent agenda. Consent is where we have items that we typically pass with a single motion, and they're typically considered to be non-controversial. However, if any council member wishes to pull an item, they certainly may do so. I've received no advance notice that anyone wants to, so with that, I will ask if there is a motion to approve the consent.
You have the add-on, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's an add-on. Okay, let's call this to the attention of the council. Can you explain what it is, please, sir?
So this is the contract to construct the electrical operations building. We sent this out to council yesterday, so you had a little bit of advance on it. But
Yes. Are there any questions for the town manager?
Is the goal just to get the ball rolling?
Yes, sir.
Like tonight? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for the EOC building, yes.
Yes, sir.
I recall. Thank you. All right, well, I'll get back to now. Now with the add-on item, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion. We approve.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent with the add-on. Any discussion? All right, not hearing any, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, that passes unanimously. We now move to public forum. Public forum is where the public speak to us. The clerk is bringing the sign-up sheets. This is typically a 3-minute opportunity to speak to the town council on any item related to life in Apex or how Apex works or anything like that. And so when I get that list, we will begin calling names from it. With that, I will open the public forum. Thank you. And we have 2 people, so I will call John Demers, and then following, maybe he's John? I think he didn't intend to speak at the public forum. Okay, I'll just mark that off. So Candace Blackley? Okay, come on up. As you're coming up, just a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit. You have the green, yellow, red light there on the little black box in front of you to help you. Please begin by stating your name and address, and then off you go.
All right. My name is Candace Blackley. I live at 1006 Modest Way in Apex. And I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Wake County, a nonpartisan political organization working to encourage active participation in government. On August 22nd, the League hosted its annual Women's Equality Day reception in commemoration of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which acknowledged women's right to vote. That evening, we recognized all women currently elected to state and county offices, to city and town councils within Wake County and the judiciary. We had the pleasure of honoring Audra Killingsworth. Unfortunately, Nicole Dozier was unable to attend, so I'm here to present Nicole with a certificate of appreciation, and the certificate reads as follows. The League of Women Voters of Wake County presents this certificate to Nicole Dozier for her public service and in celebration of Women's Equality Day. So on behalf of the League, I thank you for your service to the citizens of Apex.
Thank you, Ms. Blackley. All right, having reached the end of the list, I'll close the public forum. We now move into public hearings. Actually, I don't think we set the agenda formally. Did I miss that? Oh, we need to set the agenda formally. I am not aware of any changes to the agenda, so I'll call for a motion to set the agenda as printed.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, thank you. We've set the agenda. So public hearing number 1, this is the public hearing for Morris Acres, and Sarah Rayfield is the planner in charge. It is my understanding that the applicant has requested a continuance to a date certain, which has been specified as October 15th. As we previously mentioned, by ordinance, you have the right to request and to be granted one continuance. If Sarah do you have anything you want to add to that point, or should I ask the applicant? I don't have anything. Okay, all right. Mr. Barron, since you broached the subject with me, why don't you come up and state what you would like?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on the behalf of the applicant in the Morris Acres case. As you all are aware, we've been in this process for an extended period of time and have been working through the rezoning process as it goes. We understand there continues to be concerns associated with overall development density on this track. We have been working closely with our sellers to make our sellers aware of what those continued concerns are, and we have recently had conversations with them that leads us to believe there might be the possibility of materially reducing the overall development density as part of this plan in an effort to try to address the concerns that have been raised to date. Given the amount of time that we've had in this process, and I would say my client's willingness to be creative as it relates to an overall proposal for this site, we would appreciate the opportunity to come back in a month and see what we can do in order to address those concerns. And again, I do want to reiterate, we're looking at what I would consider very material reductions in overall development density on the site. So.
Okay. And brief question, did you get a chance to discuss this with the planning department manager with respect to whether or not the material nature of it would possibly mean another hearing at the planning board?
I did not, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll direct first to Drew. Do you feel that we need to know that now for the public's sake? I think the question is, does it go to planning board? Because if we set a date certain, October 15th, you get where I'm going.
Right. So if the case is altered substantially, then it would require a new hearing before the planning board to re-advertise, and I'll let Diane correct that.
Okay.
I was just conferring with the attorney. Basically, if it stays the same use, which is multifamily, and the density is reduced, I do not believe it needs to go back to the planning board. If the use changes, then we need to start from the beginning, really.
Okay. And as to a vote for continuance tonight, if we do continue to the October 15th date, that doesn't seem to be an impediment if it does materially change and have to go to the planning board. So it doesn't prevent us from, we don't need to know in order for us to have a vote tonight. Okay. All right. And just to be crystal clear, the date that you were requesting is the October 15th regularly scheduled meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess before I call for a motion, and I'm not asking for discussion yet, but is there a clarification question on the request from any of the council members? Okay. Is there a motion to continue this item to October 15th council meeting?
I'll make a motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. And just as a confirmation from what I don't want to beat this one too much, but the town attorney did confirm that an applicant has the right to request and to be granted one continuance. This is the one that they have the right to.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that state law or just Apex following state law?
I believe that's just UDO.
Okay.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Maybe we can talk about that a little later.
Right.
But with that said, I have a motion and a second to continue this to October 15th. And I'll now open it up for discussion on the motion.
So I would like to start. I'm pretty disappointed that the community has turned, well, I'm excited that the community turned out and has engaged with its government. That's the way these things should work. I think a good government encourages that. No matter what your stance is on it. And so I'm inspired by that, but I'm disappointed that with the turnout that you took time to come and then you're not going to be able to be heard. Your government's not going to hear. And we're not going to have a debate or discussion around the issue that's in front of us. And so that's what I'm disappointed about that. Because in my opinion, I do believe that if the issues that were raised with the applicant, I do feel that then if that would have just already been done, then we could have heard it tonight. But I assume from the red shirts and from the advocacy that the issues have not been resolved. And so for me to then ask people to come back again for October 15th for something that's changed, and we could just change it tonight and make people a little bit happy and meet a little more in the middle. So I'm only going to vote to continue this because my own policy says I need to. And so that's the only reason I'm going to support that, and I'm not interested in delaying things that I feel like both sides could maybe come to some agreement on, which is what I was hoping for. So I'm pretty disappointed.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion to continue? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. I understand where Mayor Pro Tem Dozier is coming from. It's great to see people wanting to speak or at least be involved. I can't remember the last time we had so many people that they had to overflow into the hall. So there's clear interest in this case. I also do want to recognize that this is the right thing to do for Apex. If the applicant does come up with a plan that is better and that everybody can get behind, that's a good thing. So I want to give them a chance to do that. I understand that they've had some time, but I think there's a possibility, and I hope that we can explore it. If we come back here in 4 weeks and it's not materially different and we still can't support it, then that'll be what it is. My encouragement, and I think the council as well, is if you've made the effort to come tonight, I hope you can come back October 15th, or at least have delegates that come in your place so that you can participate in our at least conversation and dialogue, and especially the part where I like where we have American Deaf Sign Language for applause when people agree. We do that, and we see that, and it helps the meeting move forward. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We will not be hearing the public hearing for this item tonight. We will hear it October 15th. Thank you. And we'll take one moment for everybody to exit if they wish. We'll call this a 2-minute recess officially.
Maybe the agenda comes out on the Friday before.
Because the applicant asked for it, and then he gets one continuance, so they had to grant it to him.
For those of you still trying to exit, we have 3 exit doors, so you can feel free to use a side exit door in the corner. Those work as well, yes. Just turn and you'll be out. Yep. I see everybody stopping right outside the door.
Well, the elevator
Whoever all that one was for.
They need a camera.
It's every staff, right? I think it's a weight loss.
Oh, Ms. Cox, would you mind closing doors? Or, oh, I see Mr. Bryant jumped up. Thanks, thank you. All right, thank you. We now move to public hearing number 2. This is the application 19 CZ 17 Woodbury PUD Amendment, and Liz Lofton is presenting.
Good evening. This project is in our western part of the jurisdiction, off New Hill Olive Chapel Road. The properties are on the east side of New Hill Olive Chapel Road and are outlined in yellow. 3 of the subject properties are homeowner occupied. 2 are under contract pending permit approval by our building inspections department, and the rest of the properties are vacant. Woodbury PUD was originally approved in 2016, and the proposed amendment is to add one clarification to the architectural zoning conditions. The proposed amendment is consistent with the 2045 land use map. Only the lots in the pink color are subject to this amendment. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on July 30th. On page 2 of the staff report, the existing condition, and there's the existing condition and additional language added for further clarification on the architectural conditions. The current condition is unclear if the J drives are permitted, and the additional text will add clarification. It will also ensure that no more than 15% of the total number of homes in Woodbury shall be side entry, and ensure that side entry garages are not constructed immediately adjacent to each other. And this is the architectural elevations, the front and the side elevation. Planning Board heard this item at their September 9th meeting and unanimously recommended approval. Planning staff can recommend approval of the amendment because the amendment will make the already built homes conforming to the PUD architectural standards and allow for design flexibility for the future single-family homes in the subdivisions. The applicant and myself are here to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for Ms. Lofton?
Are the side entry garages discouraged in the UDO now or back in 2016? Or is it just a choice they made and they?
It was a choice in their architectural conditions. It's not in the UDO.
Okay.
Any others? All right. Is there an applicant here that wishes to speak before we go to the public hearing?
Craig Deworth, Pulte Homes, 1225 Crescent Green Drive in Cary. We bought Jordan Manors across the street and we built the exact same product. We thought by doing the side entry garage, it met the intent of the ordinance, which is to not have the garages facing forward. It didn't occur to us at all since we built a bunch in Jordan Manors and then had 4 lots permitted. When it finally got to inspections, planning staff was apologetic. We worked through a solution and this is what we have. So it was something we didn't intend. We certainly think it looks better than a front entry garage, which is why we're doing it. It's the only model that we offer with this, so that's why we're asking for it. It's not the one thing I want to come to council for, but that's the solution. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dewar. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Recognizing that no one signed up, I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for conversation or deliberation leading to a possible motion.
I had a question first for Mr. Dewar.
Yep, sure.
I talked to you earlier today. So in the neighborhood meeting minutes, there was a discussion about sewer at one of the landowners nearby, and we heard that same thing from the neighborhood that we approved to the north. And so you should send me some pictures. I didn't really understand exactly how that works because I'm not an engineer like that.
Understood.
But you said they're going to be able to be served by sewer in the future if it's redeveloped. Is that my understanding of how that might work?
When Woodbury was approved, we had to build a 24-inch sewer outfall along Little Beaver Creek. We also had to put water line along New Hill Olive Chapel Road. So right now, Mr. Hepburn has water that he can tap into. He doesn't have sewer. He brought this up during the rezoning, and we met with staff and the Public Works staff. I don't think anyone's here from Public Works. They are not upstream from us, they're downstream, which is why they have, it's their property, another property, and then the sewer line. So all they need to do is get an easement, and it's like 800 feet to get to the 24-inch sewer, which is why you upsize sewer downstream of a property. So it's physically possible for him to do. It's not physically possible for him to sewer at this point through Woodbury.
Okay.
You know, and Jeff Roach, who's out in the other room, he and I both looked at it because his project's on the other side of that sewer outfall, so he can't, there's no physical way for sewer to get down the hill and back up to his development, so.
So theoretically, an easement that is granted, and then laying some pipe down across the other person's property, is current conditions theoretically could work.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
More likely if it's redeveloped.
Yeah, and I explained that to him, and I shared the email that I sent you to David and said, here's the way you can sewer it, here's the sewer line is. He thought he had to do an aerial crossing, and our sewer's like 12 feet in the ground, so he can get to it without having to do aerial. That's why you build sewer down in the creek beds. So I would love to have been to help them more. He's been a good neighbor, and we had a couple trees that have fallen, and we've fixed on his property, and we have a fence that we've made sure that meets the specification. So I wish we could do more for him, but building a 24-inch sewer line is pretty good. Any other questions?
I don't hear any. Thank you, Mr. Dewar. Any other discussion, or is there a motion?
I think a side entry garage is a good way to go. There's a few of them in our neighborhood, and they certainly look very nice. Very nice. Well, I'll make a motion to approve. I'll tell you, when this thing first came up with Woodbury, I voted against it, but I think this is an improvement.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 3. This is public hearing and possible motions regarding amendments to the bicycle, pedestrian, and equestrian plan map of the comprehensive transportation plan and the comprehensive bike network map of the comprehensive bike plan. You get all that?
That's a lot.
It's comprehensive, that's for sure. Ms. Shannon Cox, you're up.
It's settled in. Okay, I'm not going to repeat the purpose of this amendment. So over the last year, or in 2018, we were working on an update to the comprehensive transportation plan, as well as development of our first comprehensive bicycle plan. We have received the GIS data supporting all of that mapping from our 2 consulting firms, and staff have gone through a quality review process. As a part of that process, we have identified numerous amendments that need to be made, or that we would recommend be made, to really bring those maps to where they need to be. So we've kind of grouped those into 3 categories. The first are the more substantial changes that were identified by staff or have been proposed by development since the adoption of those plans. The second category are changes that were made as part of approved development during the planning process or are a result of advancing Greenway designs. And then the third category are really just changes that we'd recommend to correct errors and omissions in those planning maps. So to make this manageable, I have included the first category of proposed amendments in the presentation. All of the proposed amendments were listed in the legal notice and posted online, and we can bring up the map if there's questions about any of them. The slides are organized by general location, and then there's a reference number that corresponds to the map that was posted. Okay, so beginning in northwest Apex, This is Roberts Road and Green Level Church Road. The proposed amendment is right here and shown zoomed in. And the requested change is to remove the Greenway crossing Green Level Church Road and replace that with a side path connection opposite of this road here. The purpose is to consolidate pedestrian crossings on this major thoroughfare and to reduce floodplain impacts in the location of the proposed Greenway. And please do interrupt me along the way with questions if you have them, just because it'll be a little challenging to go back.
Do you plan to talk about whether it's at grade or something different? Or is that beyond the scope of these plans?
All of these are at grade except where I will specifically indicate it would be grade separated. Okay, now we are near US 64 and the American Tobacco Trail here. The proposed change is to remove the segment of side path proposed along 64 to connect to the American Tobacco Trail. There is a grade separated trail crossing in this location, so it's impractical to have a side path connecting there. Instead, a side path is proposed along Goodwin Road, and the proposal here is to shift that to the east side to minimize pedestrian crossings in this location. So still along US 64, but now in the vicinity of NC 55. The proposal is to remove the Greenway shown along the US 64 ramps. Again, it's just impractical. There's a steep grade in this location. And instead to show a side path along Vision Drive.
Do we have room for putting these side paths like along Vision Drive? I assume we do.
Yes, so the side path in this case is proposed for the south side of the road because there's a retaining wall on the north side. So at a planning level, we have looked for whether there's constraints. We haven't gone out there to do survey and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the only proposed amendment that we received a comment on at the planning board public hearing, so I added it to this presentation. The change in question was shown up here. So we are in the vicinity of the Charleston Village Greenway. This is Holt Road, and this is Old Jenks Road. The proposal is to remove the Greenway alignment shown here and instead show it on the north side of the stream in this vicinity with a connection across from two public roads. The comment that we received was more clarifying the change than indicating a concern with the change.
And this was one of those changes that was based on the plans for that development and how they saw it making sense that they would do this kind of difference?
So this recommendation was made in coordination with our Greenways planner, Angela, who's here to help answer questions tonight, as well as looking at what was proposed with the courtyards on Holt. Yes. Okay, this is just a change in the designation of facility type. This is Davis Drive here, so this light green is Town of Cary Greenway, and this short segment was shown as side path near Howell Road. That's a proposed change to Greenway to connect to Town of Cary system as well as the Middleton Greenway in this vicinity. Okay, in the vicinity of Haddon Hall, this is 55, Apex Peakway, and North Salem Street. Just a recommended extension of the Greenway right here, which would provide a connection for this neighborhood, it's Magnolia Walk, a portion of Magnolia Walk, to the Greenway system. So just a recommendation for additional pedestrian connectivity there. It also makes use of existing Greenway access easements.
With that one, I've looked at that one before. So it doesn't connect though in that green part, right? The Greenway stops, right? And can people get across?
So it would connect at this road. Angela, do you speak to what's here?
We don't have an easement in that location.
Okay.
And we could not build in the other location because of the way the lots were plotted. So we're
Okay.
going to a sidewalk network and then back to Greenway.
Okay.
Okay, now in southwest Apex, this is Richardson Road, Olive Chapel Road, Apex Nature Park. This is an existing portion of Kinship Lane, and the consultant had recommended for the future extension of Kinship Lane a combination of Greenway and side path. There's existing sidewalk on Kinship, so to avoid transitioning to multiple facility types along the extension of Kinship Lane, and because we have a proposed parallel Greenway facility, staff are recommending removing this recommendation. Instead, Kinship would be built with sidewalks. Okay, now we're in the vicinity of Friendship Station. This is Hume Olive Road and Richardson Road. Future park in this location. The Friendship schools are to the east. The proposal is to remove the Greenway connection from future Horton Ridge Boulevard and instead to propose a side path along Olive Farm Road, and that request is consistent with the proposed subdivision plans for Friendship Station.
Will that one affect how they get onto the park? Like, it's going the same spot, so it doesn't really matter, it's not going to change how to enter the park. It will be seamless.
Correct.
I guess in Greenway within the park, possibly.
Possibly, I'm not sure that we have any detailed plans for what that park will look like. Yeah.
About Richardson Road, is that settled? Is that going to be the location of it? Because I'm assuming that's the extension through Friendship Station, right?
So the alignment shown here is what is on our transportation plan, but we are still working through that process of Richardson Road approval through the regulatory agency review. Okay, still along Hume Olive Road. This is Old US 1 and Richardson. Again, this is just a recommended change in the facility type. It's hard to see here, but from Richardson Road to here, the recommendation is to change from side path to proposed street side greenway. That's consistent with the linear park shown on our 2045 land use map in this location. So consistent with the linear park, we'd prefer to have a street side greenway here. Along NC 55, this is James Street. This is Apex Middle School in this location. A greenway was added right here to connect this neighborhood. This is Cook Street, 255, presumably to provide a connection to the middle school. However, this is not a location where we would encourage students to cross 55. It's also through a parking lot, so it's not practical. So we're recommending removing the greenway here. We would want students to go to James Street or South Hughes, where there's a signalized intersection for crossings.
Just to be clear, right now that would take you to a private property parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes. This is shown through private property.
Okay. I think my comment from pedestrian use perspective, I can see value in getting to private property, but not Greenway per se. So there are opportunities for residential pedestrian use to get to retail and businesses, right?
Mhm.
And Cook Street has been a dead-end street for a long time. And even though I know James Street is parallel to it, it does get close to 55 in a pretty different place.
That's true.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah, and where South Hughes is, that's a pretty far distance. So I could see some value in having maybe non-Greenway pedestrian connectivity if that's not difficult. But then again, if the private property is not amenable, that's a different story.
There's really not much room here
Yeah.
for it. Staff did look closely at this one because we see some of the advantages.
There's also people who just regularly will walk through there, as we know.
But there is a very narrow strip here that's landscaped between the parking aisles. So we didn't see that as a good opportunity.
Okay. I think it's worth thinking about, can pedestrians on Cook Street or coming down Cook Street get to that retail space without having to walk between shrubbery or other things?
Okay.
And if we have the ability to make I hate to use the Wake Zone and the Salem Elementary School or the park as an example, but we did put a sort of an informal staircase there.
Right.
As a way to say, we understand that you might want to go from point A to point B without going, 20 times further to get there. So, or get in your car and drive there. So if there's a way to do that without too much difficulty, it'd be nice to see if we could have connectivity to that space. And we went through the same discussion about, well, that's near a dumpster. Is that a problem? But what we see now that it's implemented is it's not a problem. I mean, people are safely using those stairs and moving back and forth between school and retail.
I will make a note that we can go back and take another look at that.
Like I said, it doesn't have to be Greenway or formal Greenway, but I would hate to lose a pedestrian possible connectivity because, as we know, people will walk. If they could see it, they'll walk straight to it.
True.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
They'll still be crossing 55 there. It's just human nature.
I mean, yeah. It's not that I don't want to imply that we want to provide connectivity to the school. And we certainly, if that's not a proper crossing and it's certainly not it's not even an intersection, then we don't want to encourage crossing there. But that doesn't mean that people can't get to the retail. I mean, there's a dozen retail shops there that are useful to people, maybe 20. By the time you look at what's connected.
Okay, we'll take a closer
Thanks.
look at that. Okay, this is future Big Branch Greenway. This is James Street and South Hughes. The change here is very small. It's to add a proposed connection to Wake Acres Apartments, which is on this parcel here, to provide a direct connection to the future Greenway. Also, along future Big Branch Greenway, there's a shift in the alignment here, but the larger recommendation is to shift the proposed Greenway out of the US 1 right-of-way and to show potential grade-separated crossings along Viridia Parkway and the future Perry Road extension, which would be in this vicinity. It may be that we would only be able to get one of those crossings in the future, but for planning purposes and working with NCDOT, staff would like to show both on our plans. So our previous transit plan had light rail. That has been revised to show commuter rail for Apex. The intent was to remove a multi-use path that had been shown along the future light rail corridor. A portion of that path was removed and a portion was retained here near the US 1 NC 540 interchange. So staff's recommendation is to remove that future multi-use path in the commuter rail corridor. We believe the intent was to have some use of that corridor before light rail would be provided, but the right-of-way needed is much different, much wider for rail, and we would not want to build a path to then take it away to provide a rail. So we recommend removing that here. The future Middle Creek Greenway, this is future Jesse Drive. This is in the vicinity of Horton Park. The proposal is to shift the alignment to the west, consistent with proposed plans for Horton Park, and Angela's work with them about an alignment that would be west of Middle Creek instead of east of the creek.
Would that affect the access from those developments, like Trinity possibly, and whatever else on the adjacent to 55 at all?
So we have proposed roadway connections. So this road here actually would go over to 55. So would Jesse Drive, there's side paths shown on those. So they would have that access eventually to the Middle Creek Greenway.
And they would theoretically access it just from that side path, that Greenway?
Yes. So those were the more substantial changes, but I can bring up the map if there are any questions about those category 2 and 3 proposed amendments that were more minor changes.
All right, questions?
Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Planning staff and Parks and Rec and Cultural Resources staff support a recommendation of approval of all proposed amendments listed in the staff report and legal notice, as did the Parks, Rec, and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission and the Planning Board. If there's any further questions, I can try to answer those.
All right. I don't hear any now, so I'll open the public hearing. No one has signed up, so I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for a possible motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion?
I guess this is, asked the town manager this, but I thought I'd say it publicly. I really like this stuff, but I thought there was just too many to really soak in that amount of time. So if that could be split up next time, maybe this is unusual to have this many at one time, but I really like it. I really want to focus on them. I just, they were too many for me to, because I don't know this stuff, as well as maybe people work here. So if it can be like, I'm not sure we have guidelines, but 5 major ones at a time, or however many, that'd probably be better for me. And you might get better public input too. I mean, people will maybe like, we'll focus. I don't know if that will matter, but for me, it'd be helpful. I'm guessing other people maybe.
I think it's a common balancing act. Obviously, you don't want to be presented one every single meeting.
Right.
Same with UDO amendments, but we also ask staff sometimes to batch them together, and then sometimes it's a balancing act trying to figure out what's the right number of changes, and even with the number, it's really hard because some are tiny, some are repetitive, some are easy, some are 30 seconds apiece. But I think staff understands the request.
I would say, for my brain, 5 of the major category would probably be the most I could handle and really think about. Possibly.
I completely agree with that.
Okay.
So
You
when they
have
add
to
up,
take time to soak in all the changes that might happen and consequences of it. So,
All right. Any other comments on the motion to approve? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, that passes unanimously.
can we take a short break?
Sure. Already? Okay. All right, we'll take a short break, a 3-minute recess.
See you.
I didn't see this.
So basically, all of my strong
Well, I saw you at.
Did it kind of sound like? Did it kind of sound like?
Maybe I can change Yeah, no, I want to get to, oh, yeah, okay. And I do have,
She works downtown.
I did not get this.
Oh, yeah.
She's trying them all out, more than I do.
So let me just put them, what do you do? Yeah.
She's mostly like,
Yes, you get them in all sorts.
barely get her out. Out to eat with her. Because we eat, she's always wants to go. For a cheese.
For conferences, because it's these games I always enjoy. She does now. So I did. Yeah, no, I know.
there's stuff going on tonight, don't you? Should I stay or not?
That's completely different.
Well,
Then you can decide.
as part of the observer corps, I'll stick around. The other thing with the I'm naive to all this. It's an area that's going to have more dense
It was started out, I just made a joke. She said she was going to Antarctica. And Australia in 2020. This was a year ago. And I said, well, if you're going to go to those two, you might as well come to years.
She said, good idea.
I think I can do it. Because Europe's a checkbox for her. North America's a checkbox for her. So she just had to go to South America, but she can make that, integrate that into Antarctica. So you gotta go through Argentina to get there. She's in Ireland right now. She's got 20 people on a bus in Ireland. It's called Time to Go Travel, but her website is number 2.
Oh, yeah.
But she will help you. She's great. My favorite thing that she does for me she'll say like, if anybody ever wanted to go to Germany and France, or Germany and Austria. Germany, Austria, Switzerland, that's a great one, right? Because they're kind of related.
All right, here together.
Yeah, and she'll say, if I get enough people, I'll put together a trip, we'll all get together and talk about it. And you end up going with people you don't know, but it ends up being somebody else that's basically planning most of the trip, and you just nod along and go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, she'll plan your whole trip.
She would.
That's the.
And she's great with itineraries. I mean, she planned our trip to Ireland, and I wanted to go. I can do it. I don't like to. I like to just go fun. Yeah. All right. Go back. All right. We're back in open session, and we now move to public hearing number 4. This is related to the Unified Development Ordinances, and we have Amanda Bunce presenting. Ms. Bunce.
So public hearing 4 is a UDO amendment requested by Springfield Sign. That mic is really hot. Okay, so this is an amendment to the menu board standards in the Unified Development Ordinance. And the request is, well, currently the standards allow for 2 32 square foot signs at each drive-through, not to exceed a combined total of 64 square feet. And the request is that if an applicant desires to have one menu board up to 40 square feet in area, as opposed to the 2 menu boards allowed. So just to, everybody knows what a menu board is. This is generally consistent with the UDO. It's just slightly under our height maximum. It's approximately 32 square feet. And adding the additional square footage to 40 square feet is approximately the area of that yellow sign, or yellow box. Here's another example of the Duncan menu board sign, which is actually more visible from the roadway, and increasing the area generally widens it out. It cannot go taller. And just as a visual for a drive-through that utilizes 2, and somewhat like a preview board, so as you're waiting in line, you can make your decision, make the line go quicker, to separate it out. And this is what's typical, although sometimes the preview board is actually smaller than what's allowed. So I want to just jump back to the proposed text.
What was the change, I'm sorry, to the double board?
So the request is for a larger menu board sign, so 40 square feet instead of 32 square feet. And in exchange for that increase in size, the applicant would be able to have, or a person, business would be able to have 1 menu board instead of 2 at the drive-through. So I will note, talking about frequency of UDO amendments, at the planning board meeting last week, a planning board member pointed out that there's no restriction on having those 2 signs right beside each other. And we were like, you know what, you're right, because people they usually don't do that, but there's a chance. So we will work on fixing that language and ensuring that there is some separation between menu board signs. So in summary, planning staff is recommending denial of the proposed UDO amendment. We feel that the 32 square foot sign area is appropriate, is consistent with many jurisdictions, and although the request seems minor, often national companies come to towns, not just Apex, and want the town to change their ordinances to fit their model and not what the town's model is, their ordinance is. And so for that reason, staff is recommending denial. The planning board heard this amendment at their September 9th meeting and recommended approval by a vote of 4-3. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Go ahead. So I was thinking about what you said about side by side. So there's nothing stopping, a company from doing side by side, which would be significant. It would be a large mass, and we have not already fixed that, right? So, then would be preferable to have, 1 40-inch sign versus,
Foot.
40 foot sign, yeah, versus like 2 smaller ones.
That's certainly up to the council to decide what you think is best. Staff has made a recommendation, planning board
kind of, there were some that saw it one way and some that saw it another. So,
And you did say that you acknowledge that, I don't want to call it a loophole, but maybe it is it's an opportunity for somebody to maximize their signage use and effectively get what they want and more, right? And so I just want to be clear, you did say that you acknowledge it and you intend to investigate it
absolutely.
immediately, and we'll probably hear a proposal at some point.
Shortly, yes,
Most
in the next
likely.
month or two.
Yeah, okay.
If we change our ordinance in the future for the not putting two signs together, would somebody be grandfathered in already, or would they have to change their?
If they've already, I am not aware of a scenario where that exists. There's separation between, just like at the Panda Express, there's separation between the two signs when they used to. Not all places choose to use two. Some only have one. So we'll take a look at who has two and, look at what separation standard there needs to be so that no one puts them right beside each other, because that would be a mass of signage.
Was there a thought about if people only have one now, and they want to do, if we change this rule, they can just do a bigger one in the future?
If they only have one now, then yes, if this amendment passes, it applies to across the jurisdiction, not just for the applicant and the business that he's representing. And they could submit a sign permit to redo their sign for a bigger sign.
Okay. Was that a consideration in the recommended no vote?
I think more so we were looking going forward for any future users, but I mean, what's good for future uses that typically have menu boards would be the same for existing businesses with menu boards.
Yeah. I mean, what's the right balance between, trying to think about aesthetics and, not talking about mass of something or have people do varieties of things, but also, being supportive of a business, which I assume is a franchise, which might be a local person. What's the balance we want to strike between doing that?
My question to her, or just
like that's a question. Like, how do we strike a balance between trying to support someone who's opening a business here, but then that we have it where it's not the best language we already have. So.
Right, and I mean, there are literally thousands of examples of planning ordinances and best practices, and I mean, my thought on this is I like to keep the two sign option for people. As when I go through a drive-through and then there's 8 cars, I like to be able to read a menu because I'm a slow decider sometimes, and I like variety. I don't fall into a rut, so I don't order the number 3 combo every time I go through the same drive-through. I like to change what I order, and sometimes I don't know what I want until I get to see the sign, but it's nice to see a sign 20 feet before you get to the speaker. So if they support that, and if our ordinance allows 2 signs, I think where you were going with that is a minimum distance requirement, whatever that might be. Then that could take care of that, and I don't want to necessarily eliminate a second sign option from people, especially if we're not increasing height. Then it's not really becoming an aesthetic problem. Yeah, that's my thought. Did you have something? I thought you were wanting to say something.
Somebody already said what I was going to say earlier.
Okay.
But I mean, my understanding of this is it's an either or option, that it would be 2.
Yes, as the applicant, and the applicant is here, so just want to make sure you're aware of that. So what the applicant has proposed is in lieu of the 2 up to 32 square foot signs, that there could be 1 40 square foot sign.
Okay. Yeah, so the question for us tonight is exactly what's presented, but we also acknowledge that there will probably be a follow-up at a later meeting.
Right.
Has staff thought about if we add this language? I'm guessing the preference would be 1 sign versus 2 signs in general, because it's less signage. Like if we're basically increasing the market of the size of 1 single sign. Like, if there's a race to the
I'm
top.
sorry, I would say that's not the preference. Having 2 signs allows the queue to be more efficient.
Oh, you're talking about.
So the having two signs, like the mayor was speaking, having that preview board, having the second menu allows people to make their decisions earlier, get through the line, and reduce the potential for traffic backups.
That is more important to staff compared to how it looks, I guess, and like from the road being large.
I mean, we want it to look nice, but function's probably more important in this case. You don't want it, you don't want the traffic backing out into the road. It's really a problem when that happens.
Okay.
Could you clarify for me why staff is recommending denial? Yeah.
We believe that our current ordinance is generous in the amount of signage that is allowed. 32 square feet is a very typical area for menu boards in this area and in other places. And it's, it allows the preview board sign. There is the way to showcase everything on your menu between those, the one or the two. And so those are the reasons.
So to confirm, this amendment would allow one 40-foot sign or two 32-foot signs.
Right, the UDO already allows up to two 32 square foot
But
signs.
right now, one and max is 32-foot. So they're asking to increase it to 40.
Yes.
Which would be one up to 40 square foot sign, and then no other signs, not even a small one.
Correct.
Right.
That's
8
right.
feet more,
Yeah.
more than 8 square feet more than it's allowed now.
Okay. And 8 square feet, it looks like it's more than a foot, but not quite 2
It just,
in width.
well, it depends on the height.
Sure, of course. But I'm obviously
So-
right. But it could be 12 or 15 or 18 inches, but we're not talking about 3 feet.
This panel is about, if I recall correctly, is about 20 inches wide.
Yeah, okay. Okay. If there's no more questions for staff, I'll let the applicant say something if they wish. Is the applicant here to speak? Okay, please give us your name and address.
I'm Mark Wessel, CEO and founder of Springfield Sign. I'm out of Springfield, Missouri, 4825 East Kearney, and here representing CFS, which is Culver's franchising system. A lot of good dialogue here. I've been doing this for 30-plus years. I can give you a few statistics on what I've seen, and primarily for Culver's. We represent Wendy's and Brahms locally and some McDonald's, but primarily Culver's, so I can speak very well for those guys. Across probably about 400 to 500 locations that we've done, which were probably somewhere in 28 to 30 states. They've come out of Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin, that area. About 3% of the time I get into menu board issues with respect to what Culver's offers the franchisees. They have one solution, so that's our problem, which is a 40, well, it's actually, I think the copy area is somewhere around 34, 36 square feet, but we're over the 32 square feet. We're under 40. The cabinet sizing is somewhere around that size, but it's the copy is what defines it. So obviously we're seeking an alternative to this, and in general what I do know and appreciate out of what you guys have to do, you have to deal with us as residents, and you have to deal with us as commercial people, and you have to try and combine all this and keep all of us happy. So I'm glad I'm on this side actually and not on that side. But what we do know and what we try to do is find an alternative that isn't increasing something. Now I get the 32 square foot goes to 40 square foot, but to pick this alternative, you're limited to one sign. These are interior campus signs. This particular one I believe is behind the building. So they have no intention of, and it's very small copy to be seen outside the campus. Their functions are just for the drive-through lanes. I would suggest maybe in the future, a minimum, there's usually 2 reasons for 2 boards. Dual lanes, which if you would allow that, so there could be 2 lanes, or what's called a pre-sale in front of a standard menu board. As a fun fact, I don't know that this is true, Culver's used to offer a pre-sale and then a menu board. Franchisees loved both. I think the reasons are, like for me, when I go through slow learn, slow burn, eyes don't work as well as they used to, so I'd rather have an advance notice of what's coming up. But in their studies to make money, which is what a business is here to do, or one of the primary reasons, employ people, get along with the community, which we all want to do, they found no advancement in sales with the pre-sale. And they know that quickly boiled down, went to the number of cars they can get through a single lane. So it didn't up the number of cars that we got through a single lane. And we felt like our arguments were, when we were trying to get 2 menu boards at a municipality, our arguments were throughput, safety, less backup, all those reasonings I just heard down here. But they found that that wasn't true. The other side of this, Culver's is a family-oriented restaurant. Mr. Culver is as nice an individual as you can get. We've known him, or I've known him for 12-plus years at this point. We want to make sure we come into a community and represent the community that we're coming into. There are very few, if any, there's, I guess, 3 corporate-owned stores. So all of these are franchise solutions. Typically, it's a local member of your community that's here building this restaurant. So in general, we're here supporting them. We're not supporting Culver's corporate per se. And with that, to that effect, it would be easy to code bust, what we would call code bust. So we could build 2 32-square-foot signs, put them right side by side, be much bigger than, especially with spacing in between them, than what in my opinion, the intent of the code is. We're not that kind of a company, and we don't want to seek that out. It's a lot of effort here. It's a lot of expense to the franchisee. Interrupts my day pretty heavily. I'd rather be at home on the farm, actually, than at this age out here. Although it's beautiful out here. I used to live in Zebulon. So we're going through the motions is what I'm saying. We're going through the motions to make an amendment and a proposal for an amendment for change. I understand that you guys want to set codes, stick to them. Tired of especially us sign guys trying to flip them around a little bit. But we're trying to find a mid-ground, and like I say, I speak to this maybe 3% of the time. So 1 to 2 locations per year out of 40 to 50 new locations that go in. So it's a very small problem for our 40-square-foot menu board. So if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions from Mr. Wessel? Is it Wessel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, don't hear any.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open the public hearing, and I don't see anyone signed up, so I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
40 square feet is 24 square feet less than 64 square feet. So basically, you've reduced the total signage. The second reason is, if it's a single board, then it's going to be at the head of the line and probably out of sight far more. I think of Wendy's restaurant that, by the time you get there, it's more out of sight than the other pre-board. So I think it's a fair trade, and I like to give the option to businesses to do what they need to do.
Other discussion?
I agree with that. I think offering that option is a good idea.
Okay.
I guess, are we looking at that side by side as well? The 32 feet side by side? Is that
coming down?
That was not advertised, so we would have to come back, I believe, as a separate amendment to make that correction.
okay? Is that that's the intent?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, that is the intent of staff, because,
I look forward to seeing that one.
it should be easy.
Yes, great. Okay.
I don't see the right balance, so I think I'm going to go with the group and we talked about because of the way it's written now, but I'd like to see us be able to do that better next time, so I'm going to go with
All right.
how it's written and, yeah.
Okay. Not hearing any other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Bunce. So we now move to public hearing number 5. This is also Ms. Bunce. These are UDO changes?
Yes.
All right.
So the First Amendment is actually requested by administration, and this is the addition of Section 2.1.9 Apex Environmental Advisory Board in order to include the provisions for the new Environmental Advisory Board in the UDO. And so this is setting the powers and duties of the board. So to advise the Environmental Committee of the Apex Town Council regarding suggested changes to the UDO, and to advise the Planning Committee of the council regarding changes to the UDO related to the impacts of development upon the environment, and to review with applicants during the pre-application phase of a proposal all requests for conditional rezoning, and recommend zoning conditions to the applicant and town council to mitigate impacts to the natural environment. And then the rules governing the board are set forth in the Code of Ordinances, and I believe this was on the consent agenda tonight, and so that was approved. So any questions on that amendment? I will say, and go ahead and skip to the planning board's recommendation when they heard this last month. They did recommend approval of this amendment, but they wanted to suggest to town council that if it's not already defined, that the term environment needs to be defined in regard to this board.
That's not been added yet.
I'm sorry, what?
The definition of environment has not been added yet.
I don't believe the definition of environment is included in the what was approved tonight, and it's.
I was going to say, is it different from, because I don't think environment is a planning term per se.
Right.
Do we?
Well, it's not necessarily that it's defined in the UDO, but that it's defined perhaps with the creation of the board in the town code, because environment, the comment made was the environment can mean different things to different people.
So the context of the word. Okay, I understand.
So I also would add that with the environmental committee, we had a glossary of terms that I asked staff to put together, because people don't know what 100-year storms are. They don't know what that, and so maybe we can sort of like provide a link to that glossary of terms as well. I don't know if you remember that, Marty, but.
Did they specify, like, when they were questioning the definition of environment, like, does it, like, did they say, does that mean only looking at, like, water impacts or air impacts, or?
There was no specific, there was not a lot of discussion other than one member and others agreeing that that term needed to be defined to make it clear what the intent was.
But we have set clear duties of this board, right?
There are duties in the code, and then here as it relates to the UDO, it's right here in items 1 and 2. And it's related to the changes to the UDO related to the impacts of development upon the environment.
On the environment.
Oh, it says natural environment.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it has that on.
So the word, yes, in number 2, it does have natural environment.
Is that enough?
I think it's adequate.
Yeah, I think continuing that instead of just.
Feels self-explanatory to me.
If you add natural environment everywhere.
Obviously, when this board is organized and starts doing stuff, they may want clarification for their own duties, I'm guessing, and definitions, right? I mean, we'll hear that pretty quickly, theoretically, right?
Okay. So moving on to the second amendment, which is requested by planning staff. These are amendments to the parking section in order to clarify what type of parking counts toward the maximum parking calculation, and to make changes to the minimum drive-aisle width. I'll note that we did include in the legal advertisement a proposed change to increase the maximum parking allowed for churches and places of worship and assembly halls, for-profit and not-for-profit, and that item will be advertised and presented at a later date. Staff really needs to do some more research on that before we present that to the public and to you. So moving to the amendments at hand, as you know, last summer, gosh, it's been over a year now, we amended the UDO with the parking standards and set a maximum amount of parking that's allowed. And so we've had structured parking requests come through and realized the UDO does not specify whether structured parking or parking located under a building should count toward the maximum parking or not. And the intent at the time that was adopted was to restrict the amount of impervious area, the amount of surface area devoted to parking. Well, if it's stacked or if it's under a building, it's not taking up additional surface area. And so the proposal is to, that only one level of structured parking would count toward the maximum, and that parking located under a building would not count.
So we're adding flexibility with this.
Yes. And then the other part of the parking changes is to allow flexibility in the minimum drive aisle width depending upon the design of the parking lot, whether it's double loaded parking on either side of the drive aisle, whether the parking is angled, and basically every scenario that it could be. And so currently the UDO just specifies a flat 24 width, which can be excessive. And so there will be a tiered system, so you can have 24 feet, 20 feet for angled parking that's double loaded and single loaded at any angle, and rely on the AASHTO design standards for one-way traffic with single or double loaded parking at a less than 90-degree angle. The only exception is that there would be a minimum 20-foot drive aisle width for any emergency routes that are identified within the parking lot. Those could not be any less than 20 feet.
Why not go for the design standards for all the categories?
I think Russell has left. Well, I worked closely with Russell Dalton, our senior transportation engineer, on what these standards should be, and this is what he felt comfortable with. Looking at the parking tables and the recommendations, it can get kind of complicated, and so this makes it easier for designers and the public to anticipate what the standards are. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a more complete answer to your question. The planning board did hear both of these amendments at their September 9th meeting and unanimously recommended approval, and then I've already explained the note that they wanted to add to the first one.
All right. Any further questions for staff before I open the public hearing? All right, I'll open the public hearing, and no one has signed up, so I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion.
Just wanted to ask, did you want to add the word natural?
Oh.
Yes.
Right here in item A1 before the last
How do you feel
word?
about that, having made the motion?
Actually, that's you, right?
Who made the?
I made the motion, but he's the environmental board guy, so adding natural to the environment.
I think natural is a good thing.
Okay. How do you feel? You made the motion, so you get to.
Yeah, I'm fine
you
with
have
it, too.
all the control right now.
I'm fine.
Just
Yes.
for a few minutes.
Just don't get used to it. All right. We have a motion and a second for approval with the word natural added to the item to clarify for environment. Discussion on that motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. That concludes our public hearings. And just before we get to the closed session item, I would like to recognize our scout troop that's here tonight and see if their leader wants to say anything. And I'm not going to presume that you wouldn't delegate, since I know every scout could stand up and tell me something about their troop. But please tell us who you are and why you're here tonight.
Troop 209 of Apex, we meet at JC Park. They are here for the citizenship and the community merit badge. So they have to attend a council meeting or a meeting of the community and listen in to a debate and a discussion on two different sides and decide where they feel the answer is.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Raise your hand if you saw something new tonight. Oh, good. All right, very good. Glad you could come tonight. Troop 209, thank you very much for coming tonight. This time we now get to closed session. We have one item, and so this time I'd like to ask for a possible motion to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We're now in closed session. There are no more items to hear tonight in public. Thank you.
I wasn't rushing. I was just asking. Okay.
Are we gonna come find you in a few minutes? You wanna be somewhere I can find you?
I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
I'd start the car if I were you. I'm just saying. This is my personal opinion, but I got too much because I was going to come in here and work. Yeah, well, I got a little work done because I came because I came here early and as opposed to going home and going back.